G'day guys, welcome back to SuperCoach with DR and welcome to the round 16 stock market. Hope you all had a rip of a round last week. First thing you'll probably notice is that the background's a little bit different. I've had to move rooms. As many of you know, DR Junior number 3 is on the way during October, so we have had to do a little bit of rearranging in the house and I now find myself in a bit of a different spot. But yeah, what you see behind me is my Masters of the Universe collection, so I'll do maybe a separate video on that along with some of the other collectibles that I've got as well. But look, back to SuperCoach. Last week was a pretty successful week for me. I scored 2,700 plus, sent me back into the top 1% in the overall rankings now, so things are going pretty smoothly for me at the moment, but a lot can change in 1 week. Look, you may have had a defender that went down. We saw what happened to Aaron Hall. It was always going to be a big risk. Daniel Rich went down. Zorko was another one that went down, so a little bit of carnage there. There'll be lots of coaches that may be looking for another replacement this week. We'll certainly go through all the options there. We'll also talk about a few one-gamers. We will break the rules this week because for lots of us, we're getting pretty desperate. We haven't got too many options in regards to players that are on the bubble, so maybe we may need to look at a one-gamer. We'll take a look at those options, and on a positive note this week, we finally have some ruck relief. So Gawn's back, Jackson's back, English is back. Great news for many coaches. I know some people have even had to cop a donut or two during the last couple of weeks due to this ruck carnage. So with some of the big boys back, I think that'll really help our on-field scores. So apart from that, guys, I'll leave the intro there. Hope that you're all going well. If you're a member of the channel, we will get together tomorrow at some stage. I'll send a message to the members section of the YouTube channel because I think that we definitely need a chat. It's long overdue. So thanks, guys. Hope that you're all going well. You know where we start, the 500k plus defenders. At the top of the list this week, we have Jordan Dawson. What a player this bloke is. An elite user, so versatile, can play anywhere on the ground. And best of all for SuperCoach, he seems to score well wherever he plays. And that's rare because generally when we have a utility type player such as a Dawson, it's hard to get consistency in your game. And at times scoring can suffer. But that rule simply doesn't seem to apply to Dawson. He's got the second highest 3-round average in the comp, only behind Clary. He's doing it down back where he's been playing predominantly, but also switching up forward, kicking goals, impacting there. Hasn't gone under triple figures in the last 2 months and has thrown some big ones in there. He's got a 130, a pair of 134s, a 140 and a 144 to boot. So been smashing out of the park. If you're looking for an upgrade, have a healthy bank balance, then this is the man to bring in. He's bloody expensive, but that's for good reason. Adam Sard has the second best 3-round average on the list. Now 6 scores of 108 plus on the trot. Averaged just over 24 touches during that time, has a really nice kick to handball ratio, and this along with his tendency for taking running bounces is resulting in some nice meters gains. Been super consistent, is playing well in both wins and losses, has low ownership, selected in just over 5% of sides. So if you're looking for a pretty consistent pod and ice form, Sard is definitely someone to consider. Redmond, massive pod, someone that I haven't been tracking really closely, but he has been on fire lately. Took about a third of the kick-ins on the weekend, played on every time, which was nice. Only gone under 3 figures once in the last 5 weeks, and that was a 99. So, look, I couldn't do it. I suppose if you feel like you've got a good read on the pick, you can go, but I don't know. I'll be watching him closely when he plays Lions this week, though. The CC is back to his best last week, 139 points after a below par 87 the week before. A bad anti-pod not to own and basically hurt non-owners all season. Gathered 25 touches last week, 23 of those were kicks in terrible conditions. And as I mentioned in my round review, the strategy was just to take as much territory as he could. And with Sicily's lethal right foot, he was able to gain close to 1,000 metres on the day, which was a massive effort. So feel free to trade him in if you don't have him. Jack Sinclair, love this man. You simply can't allow him the freedom that Carlton gave him. He ran right down back, intercepting, rebounding, making plays, delivering some bullets inside 50. It was pretty ridiculous to watch, and I think he's going to be a really fun player to own for the next few years. Was on around 50 points, I think, from memory at quarter time, and didn't look back, finishing on a wonderful 150. Now, even though this was a bit of a dream week, there is always a possibility that other coaches don't take on Vossi's philosophy and actually man this bloke up and don't allow him to run riot. Your guess is probably as good as mine which teams may look to do that, but it's certainly on the cards. Would I recommend to trade him in? Absolutely, but that is a possible risk attached to the pick. But for me, his upside is just too hard to ignore. Bailey Dale, super game from him over the weekend and a very successful Stewart replacement if you went there. I've had the safest houses symbol on him all year and he went more than safe on the weekend, showed his upside with lovely 134. Since round 6 has only gone under 100 twice and that's been a respectable 87 and a 94, so he's got a really high floor. He did welcome new owners with a bit of a trip to the roof, hit the ceiling with one of his biggest scores of the year. I think no Daniel means good things. It's not a huge factor, but something to consider. He's got the monopoly on the kick-ins, and he's such a beautiful user of the ball. It's really a delight to watch, and his teammates actively look to get the ball into his hands when they can. So still in only 5% of teams, has low break-even, rarely drops a low score. I think a player you can select with great confidence moving forward. Baker taken over from short down back and playing better footy for that matter. A pod selection, nice DPP status, gone 100 in 3 of his last 4, but you aren't really getting the value that you were a couple of weeks ago. Gus Brayshaw, first time in the last 5 weeks that he couldn't reach triple figures. After averaging 29 touches in rounds 13 and 15, he could only manage the 19 last week. Oh man, this one hurts as a Lions fan. Daniel Rich, slight hamstring strain, only looking to miss 1 week according to the Lions media department, but I'd say that's best case scenario and it may be the 2. These things can linger, we just don't know, but usually a 1 to 2 weeker is a hold, but you need to ask yourself if you trust his body. He's no spring chicken. We've already seen some carnage involving some of the Mr. Burns picks last week, so if you can, I'd actually trade. If you don't have luxury, I think it's okay to hold, but I suppose it will always be lingering in the back of your minds whether or not, an injury will reoccur. An unlucky one for current owners, I think, because he was running really hot though. Doherty apparently came into the game a little bit sore, and that showed. Averaged 24 kicks in the last 3 weeks prior to this game, and that kick count was cut in half. Only recorded the 12 for the game. Did have 10 handballs, so that count was up, but we want Doc distributing by foot, not by hand. It's amazing he's even back in the park, let alone performing how he has this season. So I'm not sure if he needs a rest or if he was just a little bit down, but I'm hoping he can bounce back this week. Recency bias makes you feel a little bit down about being a Doherty owner when you don't own a Dawson, for example, but he should still be a really solid pick. Others are just in better form, though. Georgie Hewitt, scoring has been down, but a highly owned player. We're all in the same boat here, so no need to panic. Disposal count was down last week like Doherty, but his tackle count was right up, so lucky he laid the 10 tackles. If not, I think we'd be looking at a bit of a stinker here. And Crispy, again, had a down game, just couldn't find the footy, particularly in the first 3 quarters. Did hit back a little bit in the last, but just left his run too late. Looking like an average type pick at the moment, not killing you like a short, but lacks the upside of a Sinclair type. He's just somewhere in the middle, I think. Onto the defenders, 250 to 500k. We've got 2 Collingwood boys up the top in Dacos and Maynard, who is making his first appearance of the year. In current form, Dacos is a fine D6, and if you've got him as cover, that is an absolute super luxury. Since I traded him a month ago, and you can thank me for this, or the current owners, he's posted scores of 113, 112, 93, and a massive 143 last week. Added 30 plus disposals every week, apart from round 15, where he still had 27. Has a rising star locked, and just a super, super player. So if you're a Collingwood supporter, definitely one for the future. You're going to really enjoy watching this bloke run around. And Maynard, he's gone 94, 123, and a 106 in the last 3. Kitty Coleman's recent form has shown why also keen on him pre-season, and with Rich out, I think these stocks rise. I wish he didn't do his hammy in the Pracky game, but that's life. He's made 175k on his starting price, 24 disposals, 18 of those kicks, and 10 marks on the weekends, and I think our halfback for the next decade. Whitfield, he's been really solid on return, and my most favourable selection on this list, 118, 101, 103, and a 96 in his last 4, averaging around 28 touches a game. The Seagull backed up his 148 with an 89, but I'd still prefer Whitfield. Hawley, now look, this was a risky pick. I moved it last week, but if you trade him in, you knew what you were getting yourself into. I just think he's a trade out. Even if he comes back next week, week after, you just can't trust this bloke. You need to get him out this week. Luke Ryan is a pod, but I think there are better options. I thought Shorty could go 100 plus against West Coast, but another fail and a luxury trade out if you can. I'd even prefer Dacos over him at the moment, so super disappointing Jaden Short in that midfield role. Ridley and Cummings prices and 3-round averages are almost identical. I'd probably prefer Cumming. Sounds a little bit wrong, doesn't it? There, I'll move on. Luke McDonald could benefit without Hall, but he's been scoring like a yo-yo this year. Just can't trust him. Trust factors, yeah, just not there at this stage. And look, if the piggy bank is empty, you can bring in Stephen May. Started off the year on fire before a form drop and some off-field incidents, but can score well, plays the best team in the comp, has scoring history, and pushed out a 108 last week. Onto the defenders under 250k, and the man up the top, Callum M. Brown, the GWS variety, played the one game back in 2021. It was round 21 versus the Cats, scored a 56, so that's the reason for his inflated price that you see there, 182,900. A really weird type price, isn't it there? But look, he has got people talking after snagging 4 goals in a nice performance, also laid 6 tackles, which I thought was really impressive. If only the price was lower. Look, at the same time, I think he averages close to 50 from here if he plays. His DPP status is handy though, so I suppose he could be a viable option, but he's just too expensive for me. Kemp played a decent game for a 64, but again, the price just puts me off. My man Samoa came out and went bang. Looked really confident at level, was actually on track for 100 at one stage, but will certainly accept the 83 points with open arms. I think job security is now rock solid, particularly after the rising star nom last week, and he should be solid cover for the year. Had 23 touches, 6 marks, and that's been his best return so far. So, look, I think this would be the last week to jump on, but out of all the options on this list, he's the bloke that I rate the highest. Parnell, he's been okay. Break even of 33, 3-rounder of 45. Blanc, I don't know too much about, but comes at a really cheap price tag there. I've actually got the wrong symbol on there. I've just realised in the notes section. He should actually be on the bubble because he has played 2 games so far this year, so I apologise about that. But look, if you're going for someone and you don't really mind if they're playing or not, he's a bloke to look at because he simply comes at 102k. And Bazzo, again, he could be a bit of a handy swingman, defensive forward, a cheaper option than a Callum Brown, but you'd think that the ceiling is certainly a lot lower, 3-round average of 34, so you don't necessarily want him to be covering when you've got an injury, but he could be a really handy swing with someone like McCartan. Onto the midfielders, 500k plus, and at the top, we have Clary. What a man he is. And look, to be quite honest, coming up against Adelaide, we expected nothing less. Had to have him as either your VC or your captain last week. 36 touches, 19 contested, 6 clearances, and a round high 13 tackles. The absolute definition of a must-have. Rory Laird, this bloke is an absolute machine. So much for doubts around his fitness this week. Can obviously play through a little bit of duress. And best of all, can still score really well. Simply hasn't let his owners down. I feel like ripping my hair out watching him play each week. It's so hard not having him in my side. He's gone under 100 once this season, and that was a 93 in his first match. In 4 of his last 7 games, he's gone 130 plus. That includes a 136, 142, and a 156. So we're not talking about small tons here. If I could recommend any other midfielder aside from Oliver, it's clearly this bloke, and he's worth every penny. An absolute SuperCoach gun. Track, now, they say that a week is a long time in football. And for owners, it's fair to say that Track has gone from 0 to hero. Heading into round 16, his 3-round average was 88.6. Fast forward 1 week, and that 3-rounder now sits at 128.3. That's a 40-point spike. And I mentioned last week that his end to the 2021 season was absolutely fantastic. After the bye, his scores read 94, 123, 173, so a real big one there, similar to last week. 125, 92, 148, 111, 126, and an 85 for an average of 120. So played a monster over the weekend, 27 touches, 20 of those contested. That's unreal. 6 tackles, 5 clearances, and 3 goals. So a complete performance. And all of a sudden, if he can score a pair of 110s to maybe 115s in the next fortnight, he'll be right at around the 600k mark. So well done, Track. Keep it up, son. Keep it up. Now, we don't normally say this with Jack Macrae, but this year he has actually been pretty hard to trust. Just too many low hundreds, although we have seen some spike scores such as 155 in round 14. I got pretty lucky that round and had the C on him, which was awesome. Lockie Neal, not much discussion needed. We've all got him. Make sure you do have him, though, in your captain loop this week, as he loves playing the Bombers. Sam Walsh in great form, finding the pill with ease, mixing up some CBAs whilst also starting at half forward. Disposal count of 34, 40 and 33 in his last three. And to be honest, looking like the only Carlton midfielder that you want to own at the moment. So a nice trading option there. Guthrie, 600 plus scores in a row now and a massive pod. Maybe one for the Geelong fans, but don't discount this bloke. Has thrown out premium numbers for large stretches before. Andy Brayshaw, an absolute young gun, this bloke. Should poll really well in the Brownlow. And although he's been a little frustrating to own at times, I've been pretty happy lately. A nice 134 on the weekend. I have been complaining a little lately that Brayshaw is pretty harshly scored for his efforts. Almost seems like Champion Data's ugly duckling for some reason, but finally he was scaled well, particularly later in the game due to some really important tackles and defensive efforts. He did lay a great tackle. I think it was around maybe 3 to 5 minutes to go that stopped what looked like to be a certain Port goal. Freo went up the other end and converted themselves to widen the gap on the scoreboard in a really tight game. Laid a total of 11 tackles, was the second highest of any player in the comp last week. I think he's actually top 5 in the comp this season. He was only outdone by Sam Berry and Clary with their 13 last week. But look, one thing, if I'm being harsh, I'd like him to do is impact the scoreboard a little bit more often. In rounds 1 to 3, kick 5 goals, and he looked like he was going to transition into one of those goal-kicking midfielders, but only 4 more in total after that. But a decent option, should be a top 8 mid, I think, from here. Took a little bit inconsistent, but a decent month with some nice bookends of 167, 153, with a couple of lower hundreds thrown in between. Putting the pressure on and has laid 20 tackles in the last couple of weeks. Zeret hit back in the last couple of weeks, making me eat my words a little bit after giving him a little roasting. Only averaged 26 disposals in the last month, but the difference this week was his scoreboard impact. Booted 3 goals and really did help his side to victory. Look, this won't happen every week, but good to see 2 decent scores in a row. And I've now got a little bit more hope with the pick. Still a little unreliable as a trading option in my opinion, but I suppose he could go worse. Got 2 Port boys. Wines, he's been in solid form, but he's never really excited me this year. It's the same as his teammate below, Travis Boak. He's bounced back to a little bit of form with 300 plus out of the last 4, but at his age, I still just don't really trust him. On to Callum Mills, and we saw one of the more controversial scores that we've seen in a while, and lots of people were left, let's just say, a little bewildered at how he managed to get to 85 points. The SuperCoach versus Fantasy debate started to enrage again, with people blaming the secret herbs and spices formula for the big fall in SuperCoach participation rates over the last decade. He ended up on 85 points from 13 touches at only 69%, 3 marks, 3 tackles, 3 clearances, and a goal, 2 free kicks against. To give you a bit of context, it was all based around his scaling for a goal he got in the last quarter. Watching live scores, he gained 25 points for that one act, and that's what people are questioning. His score went from 47 all the way up to 72. Now, Fantasy Freako came out and stated that he was only awarded 8.2 points for the goal and a further 4.1 points for an effective kick. So if you do the maths, that adds up to 12.3, not even half of the points that he seemed to be awarded. So that's a frustrating part. Where did the other 12 plus points come from? This is yet to be explained by Freako, and it would be fantastic to have the full 25 points explained. It's been requested by a lot of people that I've seen, but it just won't happen. But that's the game that we play. If you choose to play SuperCoach, you need to take the good with the bad. Sometimes we win, sometimes we lose. It's, it is what it is, but I must admit that some further transparency where possible would really improve the game, in my opinion anyway. But look, enough on that. Mills, his CBA numbers are down. His form has dropped a couple of 80s in a row, and not someone that I would be too keen on trading in with his current form. But look, he possesses one of the highest ceilings in the game. The Swans will need to finish strongly even to make the finals, and I think Mills will be the one that will have to lead the charge there. Paris should be priced around 560k next week, 550 to 560, depending on what he scores. But on his return from injury, he scored a 112, but only had the 21 touches, which is extremely low for him. Did put on the 7 tackles, though, which was his second highest count of the year. Just got outshined by Merritt, I think, last week. Benny Keys, I actually don't mind this pick at 530k. Only gone sub-ton twice this year, and finishes off the year playing West Coast, North and Port in 9% of teams, and I expect him to average pretty well from here. With his 68 now out of his price cycle, he's looking to go up a little bit this week. Look, apart from a 65 in round 14, Jally's been awesome. 156, 125, 131, 111, that low 65, a 115 and a 121 last week. He's played every game so far, which is a slight surprise to me, so a nice player to own. Jack Steele, now, this bloke is a bad man when fit and firing. He's had 2 games to warm up with a 10 tackle, 29 disposal, 115 versus Sydney, and a 24 possession, 9 tackle game for 107 points last week against Carlton. So a few coaches did trade him in last week. His ownership's now up to 8%. So if you really want to jump on, go for it. And I think Cripps to the man of steel would be a nice luxury sideways trade. And speaking of Cripper, I am a little bit worried. A 3-round average of 91 and a 5-round average of 102, and that's comparable to an Isaac Rankin. His is 102 and a 99. He hasn't hit 3 figures in the last 3 weeks. His scoreboard impact has died off, hasn't kicked a goal in his last 3 outings. A lot of threes here, isn't there? But I'm hoping he can pump out a big one against West Coast this week. And if not, he'll most likely be on the chopping block for me. A highly owned player, but probably a nice antipod not to own. On to the midfielders, 250 to 500k, so I'll say right from the outset here that you're probably only going here if you're really desperate. I wouldn't necessarily recommend bringing any of these players into your side, but if for some reason you are looking for someone at the price point, we've got Matty Rao. Look, many of us started with him, but most have moved him on. Leading the comp for tackles though, and in decent form, scored a 106 last week. Warner, massive 150 last week. I think a SuperCoach gun of the future, but consistency at the moment is an issue. Scored a 79 and 59, the 2 weeks before. Titch, I still don't trust. 118 last week was nice, but he's given us a month of 80s before last week. Hoskin Elliott had a decent fortnight, more of an F7, M9 cover type pick, but playing off a wing, I believe, scored a 129 and a 91 in the last 2. Tim Kelly, a more appealing pick now. I think that Nick Nat is back. Scores are a little bit everywhere, 139, 93, 47 and a 127 last week. He'd be one of the picks of the bunch though. And Mr. Danger, the former Brownlow medalist, is back, scored 96 points, looked okay, and probably has the most upside out of all the players you see here. But again, injury, age, we saw it with Rich, Hall, Zorko last week. It's just really risky. Look, you'll either be patting yourself on the back or slapping yourself in the face with this pick. On to the midfielders, under 250k, and as you can see here, we do have a few first gamers, a few rule breakers here, so definitely keep that in mind. But the man up the top, Jace Burgoyne, is one of these players. Pretty composed playing down back, 17 disposals, 5 marks and a tackle. There's not much of him, pretty slight build, but did look pretty comfortable at the same time at the level. Jimmy Tunstall, one of my Lions boys, had the 73 points last week, which is really nice. Should hold his spot short term. Fags has been pretty impressed with him. Did kick a nice goal. Moving forward, what's his job security like? I think it's okay for probably the next couple, then could start to look a little bit shaky after that, I think. C-Mac at 50, if you got him, I think that you just hold decent enough cover. Paul, I'm just going to call him Paulie Boy. He wasn't playing old Boar and old Paul, though. That was a lovely celebration, wasn't it? But 215 teams did take the punt last week. His small forward only had the 6 touches, 1 tackle, but as I mentioned, kicked a goal and looked a little bit lively. Not sure if he holds his spot or not, but DPP status, a really great story behind him there. Zane True, again, 49 points, similar to Paul there, well, exactly the same as Paul there, but he doubled his touches, had 13, a tackle and a goal, so I'm not sure what that says. Double the touches, but same score. Efficiency must have been down slightly, I think. Rioli, unfortunately, just a bit of a roller coaster, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. Not sure what you're going to get each week. Yeah, cover, but not great cover. And Cheetahs, only the 26, played the 1 game, but For me, he had the most hope out of all the players on this list, yet he's been the biggest failure. Only the 5 touches, 3 marks, and the 1 tackle last week. On to the Rucks, and as I mentioned in the intro, finally some Ruck relief this week. The man at the top, Big Max, is back and quicker than first expected. Music to the ears of those that held him. It'll be interesting to see how he returns. I expect him to bounce back pretty well, though. Rob was expected to dominate against Ruckless D's last week, and he did with 127, the exact score that he pumped out the week before against the Goldie Cherry combo. Faces Hawthorn this week, which should be favourable in 7.5% of sides, so a decent pod, playing well at the moment. English holders, like myself, will be hoping he returns this week. It hasn't been confirmed, but I think, quote unquote, he is available for selection. So fingers crossed there. The Nanky's been solid, managed a 95 against an informed Nick Nat, which was respectable, coming up against Wits, who was owned by 90% of the top 5K. So, yeah, a matchup that could pretty much make or break my week. Nick Nat, as I just mentioned, looked great. Hit outs, clearances, contested possessions, hit the scoreboard for 119 points. Played just under 70% time on ground. And if you trust his body, which I don't really personally, he could be a super pod. Nice upcoming fixture short term for Rucks facing Carlton and Hawthorn. I think one for the risk takers there. Shrek Darcy tracking in the right direction. Scoring patterns are heading north in the last month. 59, 91, 117 and a 124. So hopefully we'll see a 140 plus this week. The difference this week was, or going back to last week, was that he was dangerous down the line and up forward. He clunked some nice marks and could have had 2 goals to his name. I was speaking with Spills and we were both saying he's due, so hopefully we see a big ceiling score soon. Cameron, he's been great and will be, I think, until Grundy returns. 2 metre Peter deserves some credit and a bit of a mention after 115, 105 and an 87 in the last 3. Actually bagged 10 goals in the last 3 weeks as well, so in really good form. Blitzarves, 118 last week, missed a fix-it, only gone under 100 twice in the last 9 weeks, so with a low score of 83 and a high score of 135, he'll get the job done, but don't expect too many monsters. Witsy, another low score after a massive 148 the week before. To me, looked a little sore, almost lethargic at times, but I may be completely misreading the situation. Maybe it was just a down game. I wouldn't panic too much as an owner, but looking a little shaky as an investment option at the moment. Goldie pooped the bed last week with a score in the 50s. A little unexpected, but I think we can forgive him. Just had a bit of a day off, and he's been a pretty reliable pod. And Luke Jackson, another welcome return for many coaches last week. Some were really unlucky, so Gawn goes down. You bring Jackson in for the 1 week, looks great, misses the next week, and all of a sudden, he's back with Gawn as well. So it's been a little bit of a failed pick, but he should be decent cover, I think, for the rest of the year. On to the forwards, 500k plus. The 2 doggies at the top, Bonts and Libba, share an identical 3-round average, 121.3 to be exact. Bonts last 3, 120, 136, 108 last week. Libba's last 3, 102, 118, and a 144. So the 2 informed forwards of the comp. Major difference here is ownership. Bonts is in just under 30% of sides. Libba is in just under 5% of sides. So a bit of a super pod is Libba. Owners would have been stoked with his 148 last week. So either one of these blokes that you don't own, feel free to bring into your side, I think, with great confidence. Cogs keeps in the ton, but scoring pattern is trending downwards slightly. 174, and you can't expect him to back that one up, but 174, 113, 109, and 105. But nothing alarming. Will be interesting to see what happens when Hopper returns to the senior side, but I'm a pretty happy owner at the moment. Dunks, he's owned by 65% of the comp, and that'd be very close to 100%, I think, in the top 5k. Tracking okay without going great. Himmelberg, he's worked out extremely well for those that took the punt at, what was it, around 350k for memory. Since going down back, he's gone 80. It was a bit of a warm-up. Then a 126, 187, 95, 114, and a 101 last week in the heavy rain. So there's always a slight chance his role changes, but I think that moving forward, he's pretty settled down back now. Parker, 2nd week in a row under 100, but similar to Mills, needs to lead the charge to take the Swans into finals. Faded late, so I'd like to see him play out the game a little bit stronger, well, in stronger fashion, particularly when the scaling is available in a close game. Brody, 96 last week, 27 touches, but only a third of those were kicks, but defensive pressure was right on, laying 9 tackles, almost scraping to 100 there. That's all good. And Jeremy Cameron leading the Coleman with 46 goals for the year so far, gone 90 plus in the last 6 weeks. The biggest pot a lot, but the player I like the least. Onto the forwards, 250 to 500k. The man up the top, Connor Rozee, found consistency in his game in the last 3 weeks with a 103, 113 and a 98. Plays GWS this week, then has a pretty tough month fixture-wise, but still a decent option at the price. Pretty nice role as well. Not sure how Butters coming in will affect him. I don't think a lot. Isaac Rankin, been in great form, went through his numbers in detail last week. A pod option to consider. Rioli pumped out a 127, and really he's resurrected his career with a positional change. Main issue as a selection in SuperCoach is that that's his first 100 in 5 weeks, just not consistent enough. Treloar looks okay to play this week, but too risky to trade in. Mitch Duncan played a ripper in his milestone, couldn't snag a goal in the end, but a super 121, 30 touches, and a whopping 14 marks, so almost a mark for every 2 touches. If his body can hold up while Stewart is out, he could be a good pot option, but he's a little bit hard to trust. The package, I know JD bought him in last week as an F6/7 loop with Heaney. That's not a bad strategy if you're in that position, but if you aren't getting him in as that swing type option or that loop type option, I wouldn't tend to trust him on field, and you are losing a little bit of that value now, but he can put up premium numbers. We've seen that last year, can go on a nice hot streak. Another to consider, but does come with some risk. 98, 101 and 86 in his last 3. Bolton scored a 102 last week, but he's a bit of a burn man and could easily score a 60 next week. Tom Hawke had a day out, kicking 6 for his 129 points. Wouldn't expect that against a Melbourne defence this week though. And Isaac the roller coaster. Don't ask me what he'll score this week. Could be a 50, could be a 130, but did cop a bit of a knock during the game. Timmy Taranto, a big comeback game from him. As usual, if you take a quick glance at the stat sheet, you'd think it'd be a 130 plus score, 30 touches and 10 tackles, but it's the same old story, and a reason why he's never been an elite SuperCoach pick. His disposal efficiency was just 56%. Now, I must admit, we can probably forgive him this week due to the conditions that he was playing in, but at 429,300 with a break-even of 81, even though that's in the red, I know that looks a little bit off there, I still think that it could be a decent selection, but moving forward, yeah, not really sure what he's going to average from here. And Dusty, well, this pick just hasn't worked out this year. I was never an advocate for bringing him in at 430,000. Not sure if he gets up this week or not. If you can get out of him, I probably would. But in saying that, before he injured himself, was looking pretty good, scoring well. But again, moving forward, I just couldn't tell you what's going to happen with him. And we'll finish off with the forwards under 250k. The man up the top, Jesse Motlop, looked really lively, pretty dangerous inside 50. Only the 9 touches, but did kick 3 goals on the weekend. So, yep, trending upwards there, which is nice. But Dendo looked really good early, but faded a little bit towards the end of the game. Did receive some praise post-match from Bevo, so that should be good signs moving forward, I think, in the short term. And Sammy Butler, bit of a nothing pick, but I think Mitchell likes him, may keep his spot. So that's it from me for now, guys. Take care. Hope you have an awesome week. All the best of luck with your trade-ins and your trade-outs, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers, bye.